All right, hey, what's up? It's Mr. Ippolito, and today we're going to go over America, the story of us rebels. We're just going to go over the answers just to make sure that you have them and you understand why each answer is the way it is. All right, let's go ahead and begin. Question number 1 talks about John Rolfe in May of 1610. So it's starting off by going over the colonies, right, and the establishment of the colonies. So John Rolfe crosses the Atlantic in 2 months, a trip that takes 6 hours today by plane. He would settle in Virginia, right? And so it specifically in Jamestown, Virginia, named after King James I, as we already talked about earlier. Number 2, 7 out of 10 Jamestown settlers will die within a year. And so high mortality rates starting out in the Jamestown settlement. Number 3, John Rolfe plants tobacco, even though the world market of the tobacco crop was controlled by Spain or the Spanish. So that's number 3. It was originally what we would call a proprietary plant, meaning that only Spain had control over it until they didn't, right? And then once they lost control over it, then the English were able to grow it as well. Number 4, Rolfe's crop is worth over $1 million in today's money. Number 5, Rolfe marries Pocahontas, who was the daughter of the Powhatan chief. And her story is very different than the Disney version of the story, as we talked about in class. Number 6, America is founded on tobacco, and it will be America's largest export for a century and a half. So that's over 150 years. That will be America's largest export. Replaced later by, I'm not sure. After 150 years, I'm not sure what it got replaced by. Probably, my best guess is cotton. But we shall see as we continue to learn history. All right. Next, so we go from Virginia now to Massachusetts, and the next settlers arrive at Plymouth. They're called Pilgrims, who are seeking religious freedom, right? So number 8, during the first 3 months, more than half of the Pilgrims die. So again, just like at Jamestown, in Plymouth, in Massachusetts, it's a rough existence as well, and a very high mortality rate. I use the word mortality. It comes from the Latin root mort, which means death, right? In Spanish, the word is muerto. In French, it is mort. Let's get that right. Mort. And in Latin, it's M-O-R-T. So that's the root that means death. During the first 3 months, more than half of the Pilgrims die. Number 9, the plague kills 9 out of 10 people at Plymouth. Number 10, the Pilgrims befriend the Wampanoag Indians, who taught them to fertilize their crops with fish. Remember that, with fish. Number 11, the Pilgrims returned the favor by helping those same Wampanoag Indians to conquer some other tribe that they were warring and attacking in other Indian tribes. The answer is true for number 11, true. Both Pilgrims and Indians celebrated this new friendship in a feast known as Thanksgiving. So number 12 is Thanksgiving. Number 13, the Irish, Germans, and Swedish push back the frontier, while the Dutch are the ones in New York. So originally, the settlement is called New Amsterdam. New Amsterdam, and later it will be called New York City. So that's what New Amsterdam becomes. Okay, number 14, the colonists are now 2 inches taller and healthier than the European contemporaries. So this is funny. If you go online and you search for this, because you can find the answers easily online, because students post this stuff all the time. But somebody mistakenly posted 2 times taller, which I thought was hilarious. So it is not 2 times taller, but I'll be curious to see who went online and tried to fill that in, because certain humans are not going to be 2 times as tall as other humans. But I just thought that was funny when I saw the wrong answer posted somewhere else online. So 2 inches taller and, of course, healthier. And the reason why they're taller and they're healthier is because they're getting better nutrition. Europe is so crowded. There's so much disease, right? So in Europe, there is disease and there is also malnutrition. So over time, of course, we just talked about how a lot of the first American settlers were dying, but eventually, after about 100 years of settlement, they're getting healthier than their European counterparts. Number 15, Puritans average 8 children, are 20% richer, and pay 1/4 of the taxes. So, at first, at least, like, life is good for these colonists. Number 16, many colonists think of themselves as British citizens, which that makes sense because they were members of the British Empire. Number 17, John Hancock and other colonists don't want to pay taxes to a king 3,000 miles away. And number 18, King George sends 4,000 redcoats to help enforce his laws. So this is when it starts to like get serious. This, by the way, it starts to get serious after 1763, right, which was the end of the French and Indian War. So this is when, for a long time, it's something, and we haven't learned this term yet. It's something, if you get into AP U.S. history, you will most likely learn. It is a term called salutary neglect, where essentially Britain was very happy to just sort of leave the colonies alone, just kind of let them do their thing, and just not even worry about them. But it was in 1763, at the conclusion of the French and Indian War, where the British were finally like, dude, like these colonists they're getting into trouble. They're getting us into trouble. We're having to send troops over. We're having to defend them against incursions of French and Native American incursions. And they're crossing over what is the name of the mountain range? The Appalachian Mountains. So anyway, this is sort of the 1763 really is the turning point in colonial America, where we go from just everybody's kind of cool and chilling, and then after the French and Indian War, that's when the relationship becomes adversarial between the British Crown and the American colonists. Okay, moving on to the next page, 19, in Boston, there was 1 redcoat for every 4 citizens. So there is an increased law enforcement presence. And I say law enforcement because at that time, there's really no such thing as police as we know it today, right? So back then, the soldiers would have been the police force in American cities. So that's why I say that. Number 20, a mob of colonists in Boston face off against 8 redcoat soldiers. This is the Boston Massacre, right? A redcoat is hit with a club, shots are fired, 5 people died at the Boston Massacre. Paul Revere creates an engraving, I showed that to you in class, that describes the Boston Massacre. The news of the massacre travels fast through colonial newspapers. Benjamin Franklin creates a postal system called the Night Riders, and this now is starting to spread information, not only about the Boston Massacre, but about like other ways of other ways in which the colonists are organizing, right? The colonists are organizing and they are communicating. So organizing and they are communicating with each other. In repressive societies, one of the things that they do, places like North Korea or China, for example, they censor what their people can say, how their people can communicate. North Korea, China, for example, the internet is very strictly limited. Communications are monitored. So if you're trying to start a revolution, if you're a ruler, you're a leader, and you want to try to put down a revolution or prevent a revolution from happening, one of the first things you do is you cut off systems of communication, right? In the American South, in the time of slavery, in the 1700s and 1800s, there became stricter and stricter laws called slave codes. And one of those slave codes was that enslaved people could not learn to read or write. Enslaved people could not gather in large groups, right, to communicate with each other. So if you want to make sure that people are not planning a revolution or planning an uprising, you limit their methods of communication. Okay, I need to move on. Number 26, England starts to repeal. This word should be repeal all taxes, except on tea. Rebels pour British tea into Boston Harbor, worth over $1 million in today's dollars. So this is the Boston Tea Party, right? And then in September 5th, 1774, 56 delegates gather at the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia and a first step toward American democracy. Democracy, of course, is rule by the people, right? Rule by the people instead of ruled by a monarch, ruled by a king, ruled by the people. Number 29, the colonists refused to arm and defend themselves. Well, of course they were arming and defending themselves. So refuse means they don't want to do it. And so the answer to this is false. Number 30, the Continental Congress members agreed that an attack on one colony is considered an attack on all of the colonies. Number 31, true or false, not every town had militiamen preparing for the British Army. Number 32, on April 19, 1775, the British set out to seize, arrest, capture the rebels, and take their weapons. I think the word... I want to say that the word in the video was arrest. I don't remember now, but it's like it all means the same thing, right? Seize, arrest, capture, all the same thing. Paul Revere rides ahead of the British troops with the warning, the Redcoats are coming, because they would not have said the British are coming because they were all British at that time, right? So the correct phrase is the Redcoats are coming. So if you ever hear that ever in entertainment, in popular culture, he didn't actually say the British are coming. He said the Redcoats are coming because specifically he was talking about the British soldiers. They were all British at the time. Number 34, true or false, at Lexington, no one is sure who fired the first shot. That is true. They don't know exactly who fired the first shot. And when the fighting starts, the British fire at 4 times the rate of the militiamen and kill 8 patriots. Okay, so here's the difference. This is going to be the difference between, you've made it this far in the video so far, mastery and just proficient, right? I'll explain this to you really quickly. Proficient means, that's fine, it's good enough. Mastery means you're taking it above and beyond. So if you want to go for 100% on this assignment, or 80% on this assignment, I'll tell you the difference. 80%, you want to get an 80%, good enough, then just fill in the blanks. Mastery, if you want to shoot for 100%, then what you're going to do is you're going to, down in the bottom here, because you have a lot of space in here, then down in the bottom, will you please explain to me a couple of things, at least a couple, right? A couple, that would be like 2 or 3 things that you found interesting from something else that we talked about in the video, right? So the fact that you've made it this far, you're actually hearing these instructions. Most people are just, a lot of students are just going to be like, boop, I'm done, that's it. They just want to get the answers. They just want to do it quickly. But you, because you've stuck around for the entire video, you are actually going the extra mile to achieve mastery on this assignment and not just proficiency. So thank you again for sticking around to the end of this video. And again, just give me, in addition to filling out all of the rest of the answers, give me a couple, 2 or 3 things that you found interesting. That's what I'm looking for. I want to see that you're actually like processing, right? That you're doing some more critical thinking. So 2 or 3 things that you found interesting, either about the video or about the discussion that I just had about the video. Okay, I've spoken enough. Thanks so much. Take care. Bye-bye.